As his shuttle returned to the massive Imperial warship, Zethkar wondered what other impossible things these humans might have created, and he wondered if the Empire High Admiral Corex Tal stood in the Grand Council chamber of the Imperial fleet, his silver skin gleaming under the bright lights. Around him, the most powerful leaders of the Veilthron Empire sat in curved chairs, their forearms folded as they listened to Commander Zethkar's report. "You expect us to believe that a primitive species has technology that violates our understanding of physics?" asked Admiral Nexvor, her black eyes narrow with doubt. "I have brought evidence," Zethkar replied, activating a holographic display. Images of the human ship appeared in the center of the room, rotating slowly so everyone could see the crude welding and patchwork construction. "It looks like space junk," muttered General Krextar from his seat. "Space junk that generates more power per cubic meter than our best fusion plants," Zethkar said firmly. "Space junk that travels faster than light using methods we cannot explain." High Admiral Corex Tal raised one of his 4 hands for silence. He was older than the others, his silver skin marked with the dark lines that showed age and wisdom among the Velthran people. "Commander Zethkar," he said in his deep voice, "you are one of our best science officers. If you say their technology works, then it works. The question is how." "That is what I intend to find out, sir," replied Chief Science Officer Velmoth, rising from her chair. She was younger than most of the council, but her reputation for solving impossible problems had earned her a place among the Empire's leaders. "Very well," the High Admiral decided. "Take whatever resources you need. Study this human technology. Find out how it works and if it poses a threat to the Empire." Meanwhile, on a small blue planet called Earth, Chief Engineer Danny Rodriguez was having problems of his own. He stood in a cramped laboratory deep underground, surrounded by half-finished projects and computer screens showing data he did not like. "The readings are confirmed," said Dr. Amy Johnson, looking up from her workstation. She was a thin woman with short black hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "There's definitely an alien ship out there studying our colony vessels." Danny wiped grease from his hands with a dirty cloth. He was a short, stocky man who had spent most of his life fixing things that other people said could not be fixed. "What do we know about them?" "Not much," Amy admitted. "But their ship is huge. If they decide they don't like us, we're going to have problems." "Then we better make sure we can defend ourselves," Danny said, walking over to a workbench covered with metal parts and electronic components. "What do you think about this?" He picked up a device that looked like someone had taken apart 3 different machines and welded them together with whatever they could find. Wires stuck out in all directions, and several parts were held in place, with what appeared to be regular tape. "What is it supposed to do?" Amy asked, though she was already pulling up equations on her computer. "It's a shield generator," Danny explained, "but not like the ones in the movies. This one gets stronger when you hit it." Amy stared at the device, then at her computer screen, then back at the device. "Danny, according to every physics textbook I've ever read, that's impossible. Energy shields absorb damage until they overload and fail. They don't get stronger." "Yeah, that's what I thought too," Danny said cheerfully. "But then I remembered that physics textbooks are written by people who never had to fix a broken fusion reactor with spare parts from a mining ship. So I figured, what if we're thinking about this wrong?" He activated the device. A faint blue glow appeared around a metal target he had set up nearby. "Watch this," he said, picking up a hammer and hitting the target hard. Instead of flickering or failing, the blue glow got brighter. Danny hit it again, and the glow became even more intense. "That should not work," Amy said, staring at her instruments. "But it does," Danny replied. "Want to help me build a bigger one?" "Back in space, Chief." Science Officer Velmoth was having her own problems with impossible human technology. She stood in the largest laboratory on the Imperial flagship, surrounded by the most advanced scientific equipment in the galaxy. On the examination table in front of her lay pieces of human technology that Commander Zethkar had managed to scan and analyze during his visit to their ship. Her team of scientists worked around the clock, trying to understand how any of it functioned. "Report," she ordered as her assistant approached. "The fusion reactor design makes no sense," said the young scientist, his forearms moving nervously. "The magnetic containment field is completely wrong. The plasma flow violates basic thermodynamics. Our computers crash every time we try to model how it works. What about the faster-than-light drive? Even worse. They appear to be creating stable wormholes using random quantum fluctuations. Our physics engines cannot even calculate the probability of such a thing occurring naturally." Velmoth walked to the main display screen, where a three-dimensional image of the human warp drive rotated slowly. She had studied faster-than-light technology for 50 years, had helped design some of the Empire's most advanced drives. She knew every equation, every principle, every safety requirement. The human drive ignored all of it. "Run the simulation." "Again," she ordered. "Maybe we missed something." "We have run it 47 times, her assistant replied. "The result is always the same. According to our models, the human drive should create an unstable space-time rift that would destroy their ship in 0.03 seconds. Yet they have traveled thousands of light years using this design?" "Yes, science officer. The humans appear to be using technology that our science says cannot exist. On Earth, Danny Rodriguez was making progress with his impossible shield generator. He had built a larger version using parts from a broken air conditioning unit, some copper wire he found in a storage closet, and what he called the magic ingredient, a small crystal he had discovered in an old mining sample. "The power output is incredible," Dr. Amy Johnson reported, reading data from her instruments. "When you hit the shield, it's not just getting stronger. It's actually converting the kinetic energy into additional shielding power." "Makes sense to me," Danny said, adjusting a control panel that looked like it had been assembled by a child with too many spare parts. "Why waste the energy from attacks when you can use it to protect yourself better?" "It makes no sense according to the law of conservation of energy," Amy protested. "You cannot create additional energy from nothing." "I'm not creating it," Danny explained patiently. "I'm just borrowing it from somewhere else and paying it back later." "Borrowing it from where?" Danny shrugged. "I don't know. Somewhere. The important thing is that it works." Amy stared at him for a long moment, then turned back to her computer. Over the years of working with Danny, she had learned that arguing about the theoretical impossibility of his inventions was pointless. Somehow things that should not work always worked when Danny built them. "What's our next project?" she asked. "Weapons," Danny said grimly. "If these aliens decide they don't like us, we need to be able to fight back." Chief Science Officer Velmoth was reaching the same conclusion, but from the opposite direction. After weeks of studying human technology, she was beginning to suspect that the humans represented a significant threat to the Empire. "Their approach to engineering is completely different from ours," she reported to High Admiral Korextal. "We design our technology using precise mathematical models and theoretical frameworks. We calculate every variable, account for every possibility." "And the humans?" the High Admiral asked. "They build by instinct. They modify through experimentation. They improve through failure. It is as if they have some kind of intuitive understanding of physical laws that we have never discovered." "Are they more advanced than us?" Velmoth considered the question carefully. "Not more advanced, sir. Different. They use principles of physics that do not exist in our scientific databases. Their technology should not function, yet it clearly does." "Could they pose a military threat?" "Unknown, sir. But if they can build fusion reactors and faster-than-light drives using methods we cannot understand or counter, what else might they be capable of?" The High Admiral was silent for a long moment. staring out at the stars through the massive viewport of his command chamber. The Valthran Empire had never encountered a species whose technology they could not understand and eventually duplicate. "Continue your research," he ordered finally, "and prepare contingency plans. If these humans prove to be hostile, we need to know how to defend ourselves against technology that should not exist." On Earth, Danny Rodriguez was working on exactly the kind of technology the Empire feared. In his cluttered laboratory, he had assembled what he called Project Boomerang, a weapon system that looked like someone had taken apart a microwave oven, a car engine, and a computer, then put them back together while blindfolded. "Explain to me again how this works," Dr. Amy Johnson said, studying the device with a mixture of fascination and horror. "Simple," Danny replied, connecting a cable that probably belonged to a washing machine to a component that might have come from a television. "Most weapons fire projectiles or energy beams in straight lines, right? The enemy can predict where they're going and defend against them. That's generally how ballistics works." Admiral Korextal stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the human colony of New Haven grow larger on the main screen. The settlement looked primitive compared to Valthran cities, with simple buildings scattered across the surface of a small moon. But after weeks of studying human technology, he knew that appearances could be very misleading. "All ships report ready for battle," announced his tactical officer. "Very good," Korextal replied. He had brought 12 of the Empire's best warships to deal with this single human colony. It seemed like overkill, but Chief Science Officer Velmoth had warned him that human technology was unpredictable. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the colony," reported his communications officer. "Put it through." The screen flickered, and the face of a human appeared. He was a middle-aged man with gray hair and tired eyes. Behind him, other humans could be seen running back and forth, preparing for battle. "This is Colonel Pete Harrison, military commander of New Haven Colony," the human said. "You are entering our space without permission. State your intentions." "I am Admiral Korextal of the Valthran Empire," came the reply. "Your species has been deemed a potential threat. We are here to test your military capabilities." Pete Harrison's expression did not change, but his eyes grew harder. "In other words, you're here to start a fight, if necessary." "Then you picked the wrong day for it," Pete said grimly. "Harrison out." The transmission ended, leaving Korextal staring at a blank screen. He had expected the humans to surrender or at least try to negotiate. Their defiant response was interesting but foolish. Down on New Haven, Pete Harrison was having a very different conversation with his defense team. The colony's command center was a converted warehouse filled with equipment that looked like it had been salvaged from a dozen different ships. "How many ships?" asked Sergeant Kate Murphy, his weapons officer. She was a small woman with short, blonde hair who had served with Pete for over 10 years. 12 big ones," Pete replied. "Each one probably 10 times the size of anything we've got. Odds? Terrible. But when have we ever had good odds?" Kate grinned. "Not once. What's the plan?" Pete walked over to a tactical display that showed the approaching enemy fleet. The screen flickered occasionally, and someone had taped a note to it that read, "Hit side panel if picture gets fuzzy. We've got 300 Marines, 47 small fighters, and whatever crazy inventions Danny Rodriguez shipped us last month," Pete said. "Against 12 ships that could probably destroy this whole moon if they wanted to." "So we're going to do something stupid and impossible?" asked Lieutenant Bobby Chen, the youngest member of the command team. "You bet we are," Pete confirmed. "Kate, what do our new toys look like?" Kate pulled up a list on her computer, which was held together with tape and what appeared to be crossed fingers. "We've got Danny's new adaptive armor, the seeking ammunition he sent us, and something he calls a probability manipulator that comes with a warning label saying, 'Do not use near anything you want to keep intact.' Any idea what that last one does?" "The manual just says, 'It makes unlikely things more likely to happen,'" Kate read from her screen. Oh, and there's a note that says, "Trust me. It works better than it sounds." Pete nodded. That sounded like Danny. All right, people, let's give these aliens something to remember us by. Admiral Korextal watched his ships take formation around the human colony. His tactical computers had calculated the optimal attack pattern to minimize resistance and casualties. The battle should be over in less than an hour. All ships, commence attack, he ordered. The Valthran fleet opened fire with precise, coordinated strikes. Energy beams lanced out from their weapons, targeted at the colony's defensive installations. The Empire's military doctrine emphasized overwhelming firepower applied with mathematical precision. What happened next made no sense to anyone watching. The human fighters that rose to meet the Imperial fleet moved in patterns that should have torn their ships apart. They dodged guided missiles by flying in spirals that defied basic physics. They survived direct hits from energy weapons that should have vaporized them instantly. "Sir," reported his tactical officer, "our targeting computers cannot predict their flight patterns. The human pilots appear to be making course corrections that violate the laws of inertia." "Impossible," Korextal muttered, but he was watching it happen on his main screen. Down in the colony, Kate Murphy was having the time of her life. She sat in the gunner's seat of a small fighter that looked like someone had built it in their garage using spare parts from 3 different spacecraft. "Bobby, you seeing this?" She called over the radio to Lieutenant Chen, who was piloting another fighter nearby. "The armor is incredible," Bobby replied, as his ship took a direct hit from a Valthran energy beam. Instead of exploding, the blast seemed to spread across his fighter's hull like water, dispersing the energy harmlessly. "I should be dead right now." "That's Danny's adaptive armor for you," Kate said, firing a burst from her weapons. "It learns from each attack and gets better at stopping the next one." The projectiles from her guns curved through space in impossible arcs, bending around the Valthran ship's defensive screens and striking vulnerable points that should have been completely protected. Admiral Korextal watched in growing alarm as his fleet's coordinated attack turned into chaos. Human fighters darted between his massive ships like insects, impossible to hit and devastating in their attacks. Their weapons seemed to seek out weak points that his own tactical computers insisted did not exist. "Damage report," he ordered. 3. "Ships have lost main power," his tactical officer reported. 2 more have suffered critical system failures. The human weapons appear to be adapting to our defensive measures in real time. "How is that possible?" "Unknown, sir. Their projectiles are changing course after being fired, as if they are being guided by some form of intelligence we cannot detect." On the surface of New Haven, Colonel Pete Harrison was coordinating the ground defense from his makeshift command center. The Valthran forces had landed troops to capture the colony's main facilities, but they were discovering that human defensive technology was just as impossible as their ships. "Sector 7 is under attack," reported one of his sergeants. "They're bringing up heavy assault vehicles." "Activate the probability manipulator," Pete ordered. "Sir, are you sure?" "The warning label says," "I know what it says. Do it anyway." "Kate." Murphy, who had landed her damaged fighter and taken over a ground-based weapons position, watched as the device hummed to life. It looked like a large metal box covered in blinking lights and warning stickers. Someone had written "Danny's Lucky Machine" on the side in permanent marker. The effect was immediate and impossible to explain. The Valthran assault vehicles suddenly started experiencing mechanical failures at precisely the wrong moments. Their weapons misfired just as human soldiers dove for cover. Their navigation systems malfunctioned, causing them to drive into obstacles that had not been there moments before. Most strange of all, human soldiers began surviving things that should have killed them. Energy blasts missed by inches due to sudden equipment failures. Explosions threw Marines to safety instead of vaporizing them. Weapons that had been damaged beyond repair suddenly started working again. "This is not scientifically possible," muttered Velmoth, who was monitoring the battle from the Imperial flagship. The humans appear to be manipulating probability itself. Science officer, called Admiral Corex Tall, I need solutions, not theories. Sir, I recommend immediate withdrawal, Velmoth said reluctantly. We are dealing with technology that operates outside known physical laws. Our tactical computers cannot calculate effective countermeasures. Corextall stared at the battle display, watching his superior forces being defeated by a small human colony using equipment that looked like it belonged in a junkyard. Everything his military training had taught him about warfare was being proven wrong. Sir, his communications officer called out, we are receiving another transmission from the human colony. Put it through. Colonel Pete Harrison appeared on the screen again, but this time he was smiling. Behind him, human soldiers could be seen celebrating their impossible victory. Admiral Corextall, Pete said cheerfully, I hope you've learned something useful today. If you want to talk instead of fight, we're always open to negotiation. But if you want to keep shooting at us, well... He gestured at the tactical display showing the damaged Imperial fleet. You can see how that's working out for you. Admiral, Corextall looked around his bridge at his confused and frightened crew. His fleet had been defeated by 300 human marines using weapons that should not exist. His ships, which represented the pinnacle of Imperial technology, had been outfought by converted civilian vessels and equipment that appeared to be held together with tape and hope. This is Admiral Corextall to all Imperial forces, he announced. Cease fire and withdraw to safe distance. All units report to flagship for immediate debriefing. As his battered fleet pulled back from the human colony, Corextall found himself facing a truth that challenged everything the Empire believed about technology and warfare. The humans were not more advanced than the Valthran Empire, but they fought using principles that made Imperial advantages meaningless. Science Officer Velmoth, he said quietly. Yes, sir? How many more human colonies are there? Velmoth consulted her D. The interrogation room aboard the Imperial flagship was designed to be intimidating. The walls were smooth metal. The lights were bright and harsh, and the single chair in the center was clearly meant to make prisoners feel small and helpless. But Tony Martinez, the human engineer strapped into that chair, did not seem impressed. Nice place you got here, he said cheerfully, looking around at his Valthran captors. Very clean. Do you guys ever redecorate, or is silver and scary pretty much your thing? Commander Zethkar stood across from the human, his forearms crossed in frustration. For 3 days, they had been trying to understand how human technology worked. Tony Martinez had been captured when his small repair ship was caught between Imperial patrols, and they hoped he could provide answers. We want to know about your shield generators, Zethkar said for the 10th time. How do they become? Stronger when attacked? Oh, that's easy, Tony replied, as if discussing the weather. You just reverse the polarity on the energy matrix and add a feedback loop that converts incoming kinetic force into additional shielding power. Zethkar looked at his assistant, who was frantically taking notes. That is impossible. Converting. Kinetic energy into shield strength violates the basic laws of thermodynamics. Does it? Tony asked, genuinely curious. Huh. I never really thought about it that way. I just figured, why waste good energy when you can use it for something useful? You cannot create energy from nothing. I'm not creating it, Tony explained, patiently. I'm just borrowing it from the quantum foam and paying it back later with interest. Zethkar felt his head beginning to hurt. What is quantum foam? You know, the stuff that's everywhere. The space between spaces. It's full of energy, just waiting to be used. You just have to ask nicely. In another part of the ship, Chief Science Officer Velmoth was having an equally frustrating conversation with Dr. Helen Parker, a human physicist who had been captured along with Tony Martinez. Explain to me how your gravity manipulators function, Velmoth demanded. Dr. Parker was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but her words made Velmoth's scientific training rebel in horror. Well, we start with the basic assumption that gravity is more like a suggestion than a law. Then we build a device that suggests something different. Gravity is not a suggestion. It is a fundamental force of the universe, governed by precise mathematical equations. According to who? Helen asked. Some scientist who lived thousands of years ago? Look, I've been working with gravity for 30 years, and I've found that if you approach it with the right attitude, it's actually pretty flexible. Velmoth activated a holographic display showing the human gravity manipulator. It looked like someone had taken apart a dozen different machines and welded them together with whatever they could find. This device should not function, she said firmly. It lacks the precision graviton emitters necessary for proper space-time manipulation. Your field generators are completely wrong. Your power distribution system makes no sense. But it works, Helen pointed out. We've been using devices like this for years. How? Helen shrugged. We just build them and see what happens. If something doesn't work the way we expect, we try something else. Sometimes we discover that our expectations were wrong. You build technology without understanding the scientific principles behind it? We understand the principles fine. We just don't limit ourselves to what some textbook says is possible. Meanwhile, on Earth, the humans were preparing for what they knew would be a much larger conflict. In his underground laboratory, Danny Rodriguez was working on his most ambitious project yet, with help from Dr. Amy Johnson and a team of engineers who had learned to stop asking if things were theoretically possible. Project Longshot is almost ready, Danny announced, wiping grease from his hands. The device he had been building took up most of the laboratory and looked like something a mad scientist might create in a fever dream. Remind me what it's supposed to do, said Dr. Amy Johnson, studying the maze of wires, pipes, and components. That seemed to have been assembled by someone with a very creative understanding of engineering. It's a weapon system that shouldn't exist even by our standards, Danny explained happily. It fires projectiles that exist in multiple dimensions, simultaneously, so they can hit targets that are hiding behind shields or armor in normal space. Amy looked at her computer, where equations were scrolling past so fast they were just a blur. Danny, this thing operates on principles that don't exist in any physics textbook ever written. I know. Isn't it great? How did you even think of this? Danny scratched his head. Well, I was trying to figure out how to get around those alien energy shields, and I remembered reading about something called parallel dimensions. So I thought, what if we could shoot bullets that traveled through several dimensions at once, and you just built it without knowing if it would work? That's how I build everything. You have to start somewhere. Back on the Imperial flagship, the interrogation was reaching new levels of scientific impossibility. Tony Martinez was trying to explain how human faster-than-light drives worked, and Zethkar was beginning to question everything he thought he knew about physics. So you create a stable wormhole by destabilizing space-time in a controlled manner? Zethkar asked weakly. Sort of, Tony replied. But we don't really control it. We just point it in the right direction and hope for the best. Hope for the best? Yeah. See, the thing about space-time is that it doesn't really like being messed with. But if you approach it like you're asking a favor instead of demanding something, it's usually pretty cooperative. Zethkar stared at the human engineer, wondering if he was being deliberately obtuse or if he genuinely believed what he was saying. You are telling me that you navigate faster than light travel by being polite to the fabric of reality? Well, when you put it like that, it sounds silly, Tony admitted. But it works. We've never lost a ship to spatial distortion failure, and some of those other species have drives that blow up if you look at them wrong. In the science lab, Dr. Helen Parker was explaining human fusion reactors to an increasingly distraught Velmoth. The plasma containment field is held stable by what we call positive thinking, Helen said. If you expect the reactor to work properly, it usually does. That is not how physics works, Velmoth protested. Maybe not your physics, Helen replied calmly. but it's how our physics works. We've found that the universe is a lot more flexible than most people think. You cannot alter the laws of physics through willpower. Who says we're altering them? Maybe we're just using laws that you haven't discovered yet. Velmoth walked to the viewport and stared out at the stars, trying to make sense of everything. She had learned. The humans used technology that violated every known scientific principle, yet it worked better than anything the Empire had ever created. There has to be an explanation, she muttered to herself. Oh, there is, Helen said cheerfully. We just don't worry about it too much. What do you mean? Look, you can spend years trying to figure out why something works, or you can just use it to build better things. We prefer the second approach. The breakthrough came when Commander Zethkar asked Tony Martinez about human manufacturing processes. The answer he received changed everything the Empire thought it knew about technology. How do you ensure quality control when building such complex devices? Zethkar asked. We don't really have quality control the way you probably mean it, Tony admitted. Each device is a little different because each builder has their own style. But how do you maintain consistent performance? We don't. Some devices work better than others. Some work in ways we never expected. Some don't work at all until you hit them with a wrench. That should result in massive system failures. Sometimes it does, but when it doesn't, you get something amazing. Zethkar suddenly realized what he was hearing. You are telling me that humans build technology individually, using intuition rather than precise specifications? Pretty much. I mean, we have basic designs and stuff, but everybody modifies them based on what feels right. What feels right? You know, like when you're building something and you get this feeling that it needs an extra capacitor or a different kind of wire. You can't really explain it, but you know it's going to work better that way. That night, as Zethkar reviewed his notes, he began to form a theory that would shake the foundations of Imperial science. The humans were not just building impossible technology, they were somehow unconsciously manipulating it at the quantum level during construction. He called Velmoth to his quarters to share his discovery. What if, he said carefully, the humans have some kind of subconscious ability to influence matter at the molecular level? That is impossible, Velmoth replied automatically, then stopped. Although, given everything else we have observed, their technology works because they unconsciously adjust it during construction to make it work. Their intuitive engineering is actually a form of quantum manipulation they are not even aware of possessing. Velmoth considered this. It would explain how they can build functional devices using methods that should fail, if they are unconsciously correcting flaws and optimizing performance at the atomic level. The Earth defense grid came online just as Admiral Korextal's massive fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. General Chris Bennett stood in the command center deep beneath Colorado, watching displays that showed over 200 Imperial warships arranged in perfect formation. That's a lot of ships, observed Dr. Nancy Edwards, the physicist who had been working with Danny Rodriguez on humanity's most impossible weapons project. Yeah, Chris agreed. He was a tall man with gray hair who had spent 40 years in the EE military, but had never faced anything like this. Good thing we've got some new toys to play with. On the main display, images of the approaching alien fleet filled the screen. Each ship was enormous, bristling with weapons that could probably destroy a city with a single shot. The entire Imperial Navy had come to finish what they had started at New Haven Colony. General Bennett, came a voice from the communications station. We're receiving a transmission from the alien fleet. Put it through. Admiral Korextal appeared on the screen, his silver skin gleaming under the lights of his command bridge. His 4 arms were folded, and his black eyes showed no emotion. People of Earth, he announced, I am Admiral Korextal of the Vilethron Empire. Your species has been determined to be a threat to galactic stability. We offer you one chance to surrender unconditionally. This is General Bennett, Earth Defense Command, Chris replied calmly. We appreciate the offer, but we'll have to decline. We're kind of attached to our independence. Then you have chosen destruction. Do not think your impossible technology will save you. We have studied your methods and prepared countermeasures. Have you now? Chris said with a slight smile. That's interesting. We've been preparing a few surprises of our own. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in tense silence. Around the room, technicians worked at stations that looked like they had been built by combining computer parts with kitchen appliances and whatever else they could find. All defensive systems are online, reported Colonel Lisa Martinez, Danny Rodriguez's daughter, who had inherited her father's talent for impossible engineering. Project Longshot is ready for deployment. What exactly does that thing do again? Chris asked. According to the manual Danny left us, it fires projectiles that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, Nancy explained. They can hit targets that are hiding behind shields, armor, or even other dimensions. And it works? We tested it yesterday on an old satellite. The projectile went through 3 different layers of reality and hit something that wasn't there yet. I'm not even going to ask what that means, Chris muttered. High above Earth's atmosphere, the Imperial fleet began its attack. Thousands of energy beams lanced down toward the planet, each one capable of destroying a major city. The mathematical precision of the assault was perfect, calculated to overwhelm any conceivable defense. But the beams never reached their targets. Instead, they struck what appeared to be empty space and simply vanished. The humans had deployed shield technology that existed in dimensions the Empire had never discovered. The attacks passed harmlessly through normal space and disappeared into parallel realities where Earth did not exist. Impossible! Admiral Koraxtal shouted as he watched his perfectly planned assault accomplish nothing. Our weapons are designed to penetrate any known defensive system. Sir, reported his science officer, the human shields appear to be rotating through multiple dimensional phases. Our targeting systems cannot lock onto anything that exists in more than 3 dimensions simultaneously. Then we adapt. Launch the dimensional disruptor missiles. The Empire's most advanced weapons streaked toward Earth, designed to collapse whatever exotic physics the humans were using. But as the missiles approached their targets, something even stranger happened. They began to malfunction in ways that defied probability. Guidance systems failed at precisely the wrong moment. Warheads detonated harmlessly in empty space. Some missiles simply changed direction and flew away as if they had decided to go somewhere else. Sir, this is impossible, reported the tactical officer. Our weapons are experiencing random failures at a rate that should occur only once in several billion years. In the Earth Defense Center, Dr. Nancy Edwards was monitoring something she called the probability adjustment field, Danny Rodriguez's final and most impossible invention. The field is working perfectly, she reported to General Bennett. It's making unlikely things more likely to happen, but only in ways that favor us. How does that work? I have no idea. The manual just says, point it at the bad guys and trust the universe to do the right thing. That doesn't sound very scientific. Nothing we do sounds scientific anymore. But it works. The battle in space became increasingly surreal as Earth's defenders deployed weapon systems that operated on principles the Empire had never imagined. Human fighters appeared and disappeared at random, existing in multiple locations simultaneously. Their weapons fired projectiles that traveled backward through time to hit targets before the guns were even fired. Most disturbing of all, the human. Weapons seemed to be learning and adapting faster than Imperial computers could calculate countermeasures. Energy beams that started as simple lasers became self-aware entities that sought out weak points in Imperial armor. Missiles began cooperating with each other to overcome defensive systems through strategies that no human had programmed. Admiral, called his communications officer, we're receiving another transmission from Earth. General Bennett appeared on the screen again. But this time he was surrounded by displays showing the impossible battle raging in space. Behind him, technicians worked calmly at their improvised stations. as if defeating a galactic empire was just another day at the office. "Admiral Corextel," Bennett said politely, "I think it's time we had an honest conversation. Your fleet is losing this battle, and we both know it. But we don't want to destroy your ships or kill your people. We just want to be left alone." "Your weapons should not exist," Corextal protested. "You are using technology that violates the fundamental laws of physics." "Actually," said a new voice, and Tony Martinez appeared on the screen next to General Bennett. The human engineer had apparently been released by the Empire and had made it back to Earth. "We've been thinking about that. What if the problem isn't our technology? What if the problem is your understanding of physics?" "What do you mean, Doctor?" Nancy Edwards joined the conversation. "We think the reason our technology works is because we evolved on a world where quantum mechanics operates a little differently than everywhere else in the galaxy." She activated a display showing complex equations that made Admiral Corextal's head hurt to look at. "Earth's position relative to several quantum field sources creates a unique environment where consciousness can directly influence matter at the subatomic level." "That is impossible," Corextal said weakly. "No, it's just improbable," Nancy corrected. "But humans have been unconsciously manipulating probability and quantum states for thousands of years. We build technology that works because we expect it to work. We win battles because we believe we can win. We make the impossible happen because we don't really understand why it should be impossible." The revelation hit Admiral Corextal like a physical blow. The humans were not using advanced technology. They were unconsciously rewriting the laws of physics through sheer force of will. Every human was potentially capable of making reality conform to their expectations. "You are saying that your entire species can manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe?" he asked. "Not manipulate," Tony corrected. "Negotiate. We ask the universe to work a certain way, and usually it agrees. We're very polite about it." "That makes you the most powerful species in the galaxy," Corextal realized. "Only if we want to be," General Bennett replied. "But we don't. We just want to explore, build things, and be left alone to pursue our own interests. We have no desire to conquer anyone or rule a galactic empire." Corextal looked around his bridge at his confused and frightened crew. His fleet, the pride of the Valthran Empire, was being defeated by beings who could make impossible things happen simply by believing they should happen. "What do you propose?" he asked finally. "A treaty," Bennett said. "We'll share some of our technology with you, help you understand new approaches to physics and engineering. In return, you leave our colonies alone and help us establish peaceful relations with other species in the galaxy. And if we refuse?" The stars looked different from the bridge of the UES horizon. Captain Jake Morrison stood near the main window, watching the blue light from Kepler 442 paint everything in soft colors. His ship had been traveling for 3 months now, mapping new star systems and looking for places where humans could build homes. Jake was 34 years old and had spent 12 years in space. He loved his job. Every day brought something new to discover. His crew felt the same way. They were explorers, not soldiers, though their ship carried weapons just in case. "Captain, we're getting some strange readings," called Dr. Lisa Park from her station. She was the chief science officer, a woman with short black hair who never seemed to get excited about anything. But today her voice sounded different. "What kind of readings?" Jake walked over to look at her screen. "There are ships out there. Big ones. They're not human ships." Jake felt his heart beat faster. In all his years in space, he had never seen alien ships before. No human had. Earth had been sending ships to other stars for 50 years now, and they had found plenty of planets with life, but never intelligent life that could build spaceships. "How many ships?" he asked. "At least 20. Maybe more. They're about 3 light hours away from us." Jake turned to his communications officer, a young woman named Amy Chen who had joined the crew 6 months ago. "Amy, try to contact them. Use all the standard greeting protocols." Amy nodded and began working at her station. The standard protocols were simple messages that Earth had designed for first contact with aliens. They showed pictures of humans, basic math, and messages of peace. For 2 hours, they waited. Jake called his tactical officer, Commander Ryan Hayes, to the bridge. Ryan was a tall man with gray hair who had served in the military before joining exploration missions. He looked worried when he saw the readings. "Those are warships," Ryan said quietly. "Look at the energy signatures. Those things have weapons bigger than anything we've ever built." Finally, Amy's station beeped. "Captain, they're responding. They want to meet us at a neutral location. There's a space station about 4 hours away." Jake had heard about the station. It was called Haven's Rest, built by traders from different human colonies as a place where ships could stop for supplies. He had never been there, but it seemed like a good place for a meeting. "Set course for Haven's Rest," Jake ordered. "And send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we've made first contact." The trip to Haven's Rest took 4 hours. Jake spent the time reading everything he could about first contact procedures. Earth had spent decades preparing for this moment, but all the training in the world could not prepare him for what was about to happen. Haven's Rest was a small station that spun slowly to create artificial gravity. Jake had seen pictures of it, but seeing it in person was different. It looked tiny next to the alien ships that were already waiting there. The alien ships were unlike anything Jake had ever seen. They were long and dark, covered with spikes and armor plating. Each one was at least twice the size of the horizon. They looked like they were built for war, not exploration. Jake took a small shuttle to the station with Dr. Park and Amy. The station manager, an old man named Bill Carter, met them at the docking bay. He looked nervous. "Captain Morrison, I've never seen anything like those ships," Bill said. "They've been here for an hour and they haven't said much. Just demanded that we provide a meeting room." The meeting room was small and simple, with a round table and chairs. Jake sat down with his 2 officers and waited. A few minutes later, the aliens entered. Jake tried not to stare, but it was hard. The aliens were tall, maybe 7 feet, with blue-gray skin that looked like stone. They had 4 arms and eyes that glowed yellow in the dim light. They wore black armor that covered most of their bodies. The lead alien sat down across from Jake. When it spoke, its voice came through a translation device that made it sound mechanical and cold. "I am Warcast Commander Throcknall of the Zephyrian Empire. You are humans, yes?" "Yes," Jake replied. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth Space Force. We're explorers. We come in peace." Throcknall made a sound that the translator could not interpret. "Explorers! Yes, we know about your kind. You spread across the galaxy like a disease, taking what does not belong to you." Jake felt angry but tried to stay calm. "We're not taking anything. We're just looking for new places to live. The galaxy is big enough for everyone." "The galaxy belongs to the Zephyrian Empire," Throcknall said. "We have ruled this sector for 3,000 years. Your species has no right to be here." Dr. Park leaned forward. "We didn't know this area belonged to anyone. If you could show us your territory boundaries, we would be happy to respect them." Throcknall's yellow eyes focused on her. "All of this. Space belongs to us. Your people must leave 12 star systems immediately, and your home world, Earth, must accept our authority." Jake could not believe what he was hearing. "You want us to abandon our colonies and surrender our home planet to you?" "Yes. This is not a request. This is a command from the Zephyrian Empire." The room was quiet for a long moment. Jake looked at Dr. Park and Amy. Both women looked as shocked as he felt. "I don't have the authority to make that decision," Jake said finally. "I'll have to speak with my government." "Your government will do as we command, or your species will suffer the consequences," Throcknall said. "We have destroyed 1,000 civilizations that refuse to obey us. Your primitive weapons cannot stand against our power." "We're not primitive," Amy said suddenly. Everyone looked at her. She was young and usually quiet, but now her face was red with anger. "And we're not afraid of you." Throcknall stood up. All the other aliens stood with him. "You should be afraid, little human. Your species knows nothing of real war. We have ships that can turn your planets into dust. We have weapons that can burn the air from your skies. Submit to us, or learn why the galaxy fears the name Zephyrian." The aliens left the room without another word. Jake sat in his chair, trying to process what had just happened. In the span of 1 hour, humanity had gone from making first contact with aliens to being threatened with total destruction. "Captain, what do we do now?" Amy asked. Jake stood up slowly. "We go home and tell Earth what happened, and we prepare for war." The trip back to Earth took 2 weeks. Jake spent most of that time writing his report and trying to figure out how to tell humanity that they were no longer alone in the universe, and that their new neighbors wanted to destroy them. When they finally reached Earth, Jake was called immediately to a meeting with the highest levels of government. President Maria Santos listened to his report in silence. When he finished, she asked only one question. "Do you think they're serious about destroying us?" Jake thought about Throcknall's glowing yellow eyes and cold mechanical voice. "Yes, Madam President. I think they're very serious." President Santos nodded. "Then we need to be serious too. Humanity has survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars. We'll survive this as well." Jake hoped she was right. But as he looked out the window at Earth's blue skies and white clouds, he wondered if his home would still exist a year from now. The Zephyrians had given humanity a choice: submit or die. But Jake knew his species well enough to know they would choose a third option. They would fight. General Bennett gestured at the tactical display, where Imperial ships were still experiencing impossible equipment failures, while human weapons continued to violate every known law of physics. "Then we keep doing what we're doing until you change your mind," he said simply. "We're very patient people, and we have all the time in the universe." Admiral Korextal made the hardest decision of his career. The Vielthron Empire had ruled through superior technology and overwhelming military force for over 1,000 years. But they had never encountered a species that could rewrite reality itself through unconscious will and stubborn determination. "Very well," he said. "I accept your terms. All Imperial forces will cease hostilities immediately." "Excellent," Bennett replied. "Tony Martinez will serve as our ambassador to your empire. He'll help your scientists understand our approach to technology and physics." "I look forward to working with your people," Tony said, "See."